時刻は午後3時を回りました。ここからはローカルグローバルの時間です。FM 読谷のサテライトスタジオで生放送をお届けしています。YouTube からもご覧いただけますので、どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。ローカルな視点とグローバルな視野で今日も新しい発見をお届けします。皆さん改めましてこんにちは。ローカルグローバルのパーソナリティを務めるレン大谷です。現在16歳で沖縄クリスチャンスクールインターナショナル中小 OCSI の高校生です。東京で生まれ、2歳から 9年間は韓国で暮らしました。そしてこの沖縄ではもう6年間住んでいて、今ではすっかり沖縄と暮らしの、文化に魅了されています。この番組は沖縄というローカルな場所から世界とのグローバルなつながりを見つめ直すために始めました。日常の中にある国際性や文化の交差点を私自身の視点でゆったり語っていきたいと思います。本日は、久しぶりにゲストさんをお呼びしたので、ご紹介したいと思います。ゲストさんの第一言語も英語になっておりますので、ほとんどの、番組は今日英語で喋っていきたいと思うんですけど、ところどころ、日本語の通訳も私が入れていこうと思いますので、どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。始まる前に1曲かけたいと思うんですけど、今までずっと藤井風さんの音楽を流していたんですけど、今日は特別に、私が、好きなスピッツさんの音楽を流していきたいと思います。こちらも最近私が毎日聴いている歌なので、どうぞお聴きください。聴いてください。スピッツさんの空も飛べるはず。 今お聞きいただいたのは、スピッツの、空も飛べるはずです。今日も、ゲストさんをお呼びしております。このゲストさんは私の親友でもあり、学校の勉強のパートナーだったり、課外活動のパートナーでもある、カイ・ハリソンさんです。ここからは英語で話していきますので、ところどころ通訳入れるところでお聞きしてください。So Kai, your mic is on. Could you say like a Jiko Shokai?
Hello, guys. My name is Kai Harrison. I am an 11th grader with Ren Otani, and we both go to Okinawa Christian School International. It's great to be on here. Thank you.
All right. So today we'll be talking about the education difference in America, like international schools, the American curriculum, and the Japanese curriculum that the normal public schools enforce. And we'll be talking about the merits, and then also I'll be asking Kai some questions as he experiences it firsthand every day. So Kai, you've experienced Japanese education a little bit in your elementary school, and you've mostly been in American education, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
So I went to American elementary school from since kindergarten to 4th grade, actually. And after that, I came to Okinawa, and I've been on the on-base school for 4th to 5th grade. And since then, I've been to private school starting from middle school. And during that time, I actually went to the Japanese elementary school just for a week to try it out and see how it was like. So yeah, that's how my experience has been so far.
All right. Thank you. And so what was it like experiencing that Japanese education for like a week?
Honestly, it was quite the culture shock. I came from the American elementary school, and there it was a lot more, I wouldn't say restricted, but a lot of the power was in the teacher's hands.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, like a lot of the classes, like when you move from class to class, like the teacher would put you in a line, and you'd have a line leader, and you'd walk to classes. But when I went to the Japanese school for a short period of time, it was a lot more responsibility on the students themselves. Things, like after you finish eating lunch, like you would have a cleaning time where all the students would get up and clean their certain places that they were assigned to.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really something I'd never done in American schools, and I really thought that was something cool. And I think that's really a good way to learn responsibility at a young age.
All right. So would you say those experiences are a little bit humbling in some cases?
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot more humbling. In American schools, I feel like they tend to have everybody go through the same exact thing and try to even it out. But in those experiences in Japanese schools where you kind of take the responsibility in your own hands and kind of do work by yourself, I think it definitely puts you in a spot where you have to learn from your mistakes and kind of accept how you need to grow in those ways.
Mm-hmm. And I've been to Japanese education every summer in my elementary school. I'll go back to Tokyo from Korea and go attend Japanese just normal public school. And then even in my middle school career, I spent maybe a month or so in Okinawa Middle School. And I would agree with you. There was quite a bit of a cultural shock there.
Yeah.
Including the cleaning after lunch and greeting teachers. There's it's pretty responsibility based from such a young age.
Mm-hmm.
So what I usually talk about on this show is about some of my extracurricular activities, my startups, and a lot of it is reliant on AI, and obviously there's a lot of demerits when it comes to a teacher, a human being teaching you, right? There's favoritism, there's some leniency. It's not always fair towards every single student.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think strikes the balance between having an AI tutor online from a couple of years from now, or having a human teacher that sort of isn't always fair, especially in America? The quality of the teachers are a little bit low sometimes. What do you think strikes the balance there?
That's a really interesting question, because when it comes to traditional teaching, I think a lot of what's expected from a teacher is to give a lot of fairness and equality to all the students.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that should actually go into the AI's hands, because AI really has no bias to students. They can't favor one student over another. So I think having AI giving the baseline teaching to all students is a very good tool. However, I think it's very important to have personalized teaching. I think teachers are the best way to get a student involved firsthand. Like if a student has a problem that they're dealing with and they can't quite work it out with an I think the teacher is always going to be there to help them out. So I think that AI is a great tool to give everyone baseline understanding of a subject and kind of teach them all the way through. But I think a teacher should always be there to kind of refine them and help them in their own specific needs.
Exactly. And when AI, AI is getting better and better every day. So in 20 years from now, we'll probably have not just AI, but AI sort of integrated into robots or stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
In that case, do you think they would completely replace teachers?
That's a really interesting question. I think there certainly is a possibility of them replacing teachers, but I don't think it's quite viable within like 20 to 30 years. Mostly by the fact of how communal school is. I think school is really based on having people to socialize with and having teachers to look up to as kind of like role models. And while I think it kind of fails sometimes with not good teachers and not stepping up for students, I think that it's a really important aspect of school to have a physical teacher that you can interact with and ask questions. And while I think AI can manage to replicate it, it won't really replicate it to the full extent where they can have a connection with another human being. That way.
Exactly. That's something that's talked about a lot recently, and we go to a private school. We're pretty privileged in that sense. So we're sort of into bilingual education as well. So, do you think all public schools should shift and sort of enforce, semi-bilingual education as well?
I would say that they should offer it. All schools should offer bilingual education, and I think that honestly, I think they should enforce at least 1 year of learning bilingual education. It really helps students not only be able to communicate with other people effectively, but also kind of share their culture, share their language, and have something to have a middle ground between other people. And yeah, I think slight enforcement would be very good in public and private schools.
Yeah, so 3 decades ago, Japan's English literacy rate was at 14th place in the world, and right now it's in the 87th place in the world. And thinking about that, I've been sort of thinking about if Japanese schools should consider sort of a semi-bilingual lesson as well, because if we do fully bilingual, some students tend to be lenient towards English too much and forget their first language. So that's something to consider as well. We'll talk about that more after the short commercial break, and I'll translate what we talked about in Japanese a little bit, and we'll be expounding from our topic here and on. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you after a short commercial break. And we might play a song between there as well. Right? Thank you, Kai.
Yeah, thank you.
はい、では、先ほどの、セグメントの続きを少し話していきたいと思います。一度、今回の、番組は、ほとんど英語で話していく、つもりではあるんですが、一度じゃあ日本語でも、簡単に自己紹介していただけたらどうぞ。
こんにちは、田川海です。今は高校2年生で OCSI 沖縄クリスチャンインターナショナルスクールに通ってます。よろしくお願いします。
はい、ありがとうございます。では今まで第1コーナーで話したところをちょっと追訳していきたいと思います。カイ君は、小学校4年生、大体4年生まで、アメリカに住んでいたということで、その後は沖縄に引っ越して、沖縄で2年間はアメリカの基地の中の小学校へ通っていて、6年生から今に至るまで、OCSI、沖縄クリスチャンスクールインターナショナルに、通っていらっしゃるということです。私も、5年生から通っていますので、少し学校に慣れてきたところにカイ君がやってきました。その時の日もお互いすごく覚えていて、そこから中学校はあまり仲いいわけでもありませんでしたけど、2、3年ほど前から、音楽でしたりいろいろ趣味があったということで、だいぶ仲良くなっております。そこで、カイ君も学校でもとてもいろんな活動に参加していらっしゃって、いろいろ勉強も得意ですのでちょっと伺いたかったんですけど、いろいろな経験をしてきたっていうことで、日本の学校にも実は1週間通ったことがあるっていうことで、どういう感想だったのかっていう聞いたところ、教育はさておいて、一番大きく感じたのは日本の学校は大きく責任感を持たされるということですね。昼ご飯を食べた後に生徒たちが自分で掃除をしたりとか、先生たちに話す態度とか、そういうところがアメリカの学校より、もっと重視されているっていうのが、カイ君が言っていたことで、その後AI の進歩とそういった部分を教育と考えていたところ、AI は先生が AI が進歩していったら先生はいらないんじゃないかっていう質問をちょっとかけてみたところ、カイ君は、AI が大きくカバーしていけるところ、もっと生徒一人一人に平等に、教育を与えていくことは可能であるけれども、細かいところ細部の責任は先生たちが取っていかないと、生徒一人一人が学校へのマインドセットに大きく影響を与えるのではないかという話をしていました。ここからまた英語で話していきますので、どうぞ、よろしくお願いします。So Kai, you're obviously in the education of American curriculum. What are your thoughts, or after you graduate OCSI, what are your thoughts in your career life?
Well, I am planning to go to American college, so continuing an American education course. I haven't quite decided where to go, or not quite where to study, what to study either. But yeah, as of right now, I would like to continue my education path in America.
Yeah. So if you go to American curriculum or international school like us, we both have the option to go to Japanese school with the international line, or we also have the option to sort of go to American school or school abroad. Do you think that opens doors in your career life?
Oh, absolutely. I think going to an international school really opens up and widens the possibilities of going to many different colleges abroad and in America. Me personally, I could go to Japanese colleges, but I find it quite selective with their English courses. I'm not very good at Japanese, so I'm really only looking at Japanese colleges with English taught courses. But I think many other people in OCSI, for example, speak Japanese, and that really opens up paths for them, both in America and out of America. So I think that's really a great thing.
Alright, thank you. I think the same. ここでちょっと日本語の通訳入りたいと思います。カイ君が、感じているところは、アメリカの学校通っているということで、アメリカの教育を受けているということで、日本語も英語も両方とも喋れるようになっていくことで、 日本にある大学も行けることもできますし、アメリカにある大学も行くこともできるということです。私自身も大学のことも考えていますが、日本でいう名門大学、東京大学、慶応大学、早稲田大学でしたり、すべてアメリカのインターナショナルラインがあるんです。そのインターナショナルラインはやはり、普通の日本の方が、日本の学校から、進学校通って、受験勉強して内申の成績頑張って、東京大学入るよりもはるかに簡単に入れてしまうんですね。なので日本人の生徒が、インターナショナルスクールに、通っていた場合、早稲田大学、慶応大学、などに行くことが多いです。それで日本語も喋れるので、日本でのキャリアライフにおいてはすごくアドバンテージがあるんじゃないかと思います。カイ君自身は、日本語よりも英語がうまいということで、日本の学校よりかはアメリカの学校を考えているということですね。So Kai,
Yeah,
AI is evolving, right?
of course.
And there's people in our school that sort of reject AI and they don't want to use AI. They don't want to be reliant on AI, right? And I feel like there's a quiet shift from, essays or emails being too polished. 3 years ago, the more polished, the better, right? But, I feel like there's a quiet shift right now. The more human and the more human the essays and your emails are, it adds value to your email and your essays. And the more experience-based or the more ethos-based all your works are, I think there's a quiet shift that's happening. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So, a lot of people have different writing styles, and that really depends on them. But I feel like the overly polished look that ChatGPT, for example, gives out, like in essays, I think while there are clear ways to see if an essay was written by ChatGPT, for example, I think that it's also a very polished look. For example, like M dashes, there are many people who use them, and it gives off a polished look. But I think, like people who aren't quite as experienced and they want to get better at writing, they might slowly shift away from more sophisticated writing styles because it might look AI generated. They might want to seem more human so that they don't get flagged. So I think that really puts kind of a restraint on growing learners and essay writers because they don't want to seem like they're using ChatGPT. So they kind of like add in like little, not so much mistakes, but they kind of add in like human things that ChatGPT might not make itself. So I think while it has a lot of value, it might be slightly detrimental to an essay writer's growth.
Exactly. So, ChatGPT replicates M dashes, stuff such as M dashes because polished essay writers or really experienced essay writers use M dashes. However, since ChatGPT is, taking over a majority of the essays that are written and M dashes are just becoming more prominent in, everyday essays, people are shifting away from using ChatGPT and using that polished, ChatGPT-esque or ChatGPT style. So I would like to, sort of move on from the AI. And I feel like what's more important than, which university you go to or what kind of grades you have. The most important thing is, being successful in your career life and thriving in your field, right? In Japan, there's this big separation in education. People say, do you want to go to humanities or do you want to go to the STEM field? Those are like the two options you have when you go to university. If you were to, sort of say that in Japanese context, which side would you want to go to?
Personally, I would say I'm more leaning on the humanities side. I feel like, while it's not quite as a concrete degree or learning experience, I think it still holds a lot of value, right? There are a lot of humanities that are kind of losing their value, but I think it's still a very solid degree family, and there are many jobs out there that are requiring humanity degrees. And I really think it not only helps you to receive the certificate, but I think it also helps to be able to have ideas and like create your own thoughts about certain aspects of humanities with these degrees.
Completely. Um, so yeah, Japanese education significantly, the STEM field is more popular. I think the STEM field is a little bit different from what Japanese people imagine because when we think of STEM, even high schoolers are sort of publishing research papers or having their own experiments, and some people are quite literally finding the cure to cancer. In Japan, when you think of STEM field, it's literally just mathematics or calculus or experiment-based research, but it's not as high-leveled as what we imagine as STEM field. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, personally, I'm not that well versed in Japanese STEM fields, but from my understanding, it seems like they focus a lot more on the math side and like solving problems. Meanwhile, in American systems, I feel like STEM, when people refer to STEM, they mostly refer to engineering. I think a lot of it kind of circles back to engineering, whichever way you take it. Science, technology, and then the engineering part, obviously. But a lot of people who go into STEM fields either end up going into engineering or scientist. And I think it's quite a different connotation from the Japanese side, where it's mostly just mathematics and kind of like more concrete learning. I guess in American STEM, you're expected to create more things and kind of like innovate new ideas. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
Yep. So I definitely agree with you, and I think the American curriculum obviously has these demerits where some things might not feel too fair in some cases. The richer you are, the more extracurricular opportunities you have, and more tutoring opportunities you have. Those are some disadvantages or the demerits of American education. But in Japanese education, I guess it's fair because all you do is a standardized test, and everyone's just graded based on that. I'll be talking about that more so after the second corner, after our second commercial break, and we'll be talking about whether stuff are fair in education or not in both countries. So I'll see you after the short commercial break. Thank you, Kai.
Thank you.
はい、第2コーナーでは、アメリカの、教育と日本の教育の平等さについて、お話をしました。ここで一度沖縄クリスマスマーケット、実行委員会からの、メッセージを読み上げたいと思います。私が模擬国連をやっている際に沖縄小学高等学校の、生徒の方、金蛇のぞみさんからのメッセージです。沖縄クリスマスマーケット実行委員会について、こんにちは。私たちは沖縄クリスマスマーケット実行委員会です。沖縄県内10校以上から集まった高校生、60名で構成され、地域活性化の、子どもの支援を目的としたチャリティーイベントを企画運営しております。 すべてすでに、那覇市、波の上海空公園、中央広場に使用許可を、いただいており、沖縄タイムズ社からも、取材を決定しているということです。高校生主体ながら、本格的に地域を巻き込んだ準備を進めているということです。イベントの詳細は、名前は沖縄クリスマスマーケット、日時は、2025年12月20日、21日、会場は那覇市、波の上、海空公園中央広場。内容はヨーロッパ風の本格的なクリスマスマーケット。高校生バンドや地域アーティストによる音楽ライブ、大きなクリスマス、ツリーとイルミネーション、多世代で楽しめるブースや体験などがあるそうです。こういったこともありますので、皆さんもし時間がありましたら、足を運んでください。かいくんも実は金城のぞみさんとも馴染みがあって、うちの模擬国連クラブにも入っておりますので、もしかしたら後で、時間があればその話もしていきたいと思います。ここで、一曲をおかけしたいと思います。こちらもスピッツの歌になるんですが、この歌のタイトルは、皆さん知っていると思うんですが、チェリーです。どうぞ。 はい、今聞き、いただいたのはスピッツのチェリーでございます。さて、第2コーナーでは話をしたんですが、日本の教育のシステムとアメリカの教育のシステムの平等さについて話していました。これからもそれについてもう少し話していくので、どうぞよろしくお願いします。So, like we talked about, Japanese education relies on the final test score you take. There's this test called, Daiken, and then if you take that, based on your score, you can apply to different schools. And if you get this certain amount of score on that test, you're pretty much guaranteed a spot in that university. It's just that it's incredibly hard. Only a couple students actually succeed in the test, and then those students go to this school called Tokyo Roku Daigaku, which is like the best 6 schools in Japan. And then after that, most people just go to what we call community colleges, or they just go to their career life. And then we have this American curriculum, where it's just based on your grade per average, your standardized test scores, whether that's ACT or SAT, and it's also heavily based on your essay, and also heavily based on your extracurricular activities and your recommendation letters, community service hours, volunteer hours, all of that. When it comes to SAT score, essay, and extracurricular activities, volunteer hours, the rich are significantly more advantaged than the middle class or the lower class in that case. What do you think is more fair? And if you can't answer that, straightforwardly, which system is better in your opinion?
To answer that question, I think that the more inherently fair one is going to be the Japanese system. Like everybody has the same shot at getting into the college they want, because they all have to take the same test and they all have the same time to prepare for it. On the other hand, though, I feel like the test isn't enough to actually capture intangible things such as like leadership qualities or service and things like that, like extracurriculars that the American system can. And I think the American system, in theory, it's great. You can identify leaders and you can identify people who are passionate about certain things. However, it leads to a lot of wealth disparity issues. For example, rich people are much more privileged to get into these colleges. Firstly, because they're rich, they have a lot of money, they have more connections than normal people do, and they also have a lot more opportunities to get into better extracurriculars and participate in those kind of things. And in the same time, the poor people also actually manage to benefit, the people in the very bottom, in certain aspects in the Ivy Leagues, because the way American systems give out financial aid, they aid people really heavily based on their financial needs. So if a not well-off person manages to have the qualifications to enter an Ivy League, I think that benefits them a lot, because these colleges are willing to give out a lot of money to these people in need. Whereas the people in the middle class really are screwed over, honestly. They are missing a lot of the opportunities that both the extremes have. So what I would say is the American system, in theory, is great, but it's very flawed in the fairness sector, because people with more money have significantly more chances of getting in.
Yep, I agree with you based on that. There was this phase in my life. I used to think the American curriculum was perfect, because it not just grades you or judges you based on your academic skills, but judges you based on your societal skills, or what you'll be in what kind of person you'll be as as a member of society, right? However, the Japanese system just strikes the part where your academic skills, and ultimately academic skills don't matter too much when you become a member of society. Sometimes the academically gifted don't end up being successful. They end up struggling in many different parts of their life, even more than people that are a little less skilled in the academic aspect. there was sort of a limit put on the H-1B visa this year in the Trump administration. The H-1B visa is basically the visa that let the Asian people into Silicon Valley, and that sort of revolutionized American technological advance. What are your thoughts on that? Limiting international students into universities.
I personally think that's a very dangerous situation to put on American colleges, mostly because America thrives on bringing in international students. America's known for being the melting pot, having lots of people come in from many different cultures and sharing their cultures and growing into one large mixed community. And I think that's what really sets America apart from a lot of different countries, is their ability to attract leaders and great people from many different corners of the world. And I think limiting visas on a certain people group is something very dangerous. I think there are reasons for it, but I think that the bads outweigh the goods, and honestly. I think, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you fully on that because, Japan can't just let in that amount of immigrants like America does because the scale is different and the culture is different. American history is relatively short, almost 300 years basically. And then, we have Japan, which is an incredibly long history. And we have, not really been based on immigrants all our history. So that we can't replicate that. But I agree with you. America is set apart because they have that H-1B visa. And they're technologically ahead of the world because of that, revolution that happened in Silicon Valley in the early 2000s, 90 to 2000, from Asian people coming into America, and a lot of Asian people sought after the education and the fairness that America had, and limiting that can be a little bit dangerous. And honestly, the bad indeed outweighs the good in this situation when it comes to this risk analysis. We'll talk more about that in our third segment, go in depth, and close up after that. Thank you, Kai.
Yeah, thank you.
今回は、田川海君、甲斐ハリソン君と今日話しております。私の高校の同級生で、いろいろなさまざまな経験もあって、日本の教育システムやアメリカの教育システムにも、使ったことがあって、そして課外活動を出したりとか、大学への進学、キャリアライフについてもいろいろ考えている方なので、いろいろ伺っております。ここからはまた英語で話しますので、どうぞお聞きください。So Kai, we talked about equality. We assessed about the AI usage and what it will look like in 30 years from now on. We also, talked about if the rich people are more advantaged, the visa problems that America is facing, letting in international students, whether to do that or not, the dangers and the risk analysis on that. As we're closing up, I want to talk. I sort of want to get your opinion on everything. Um, 20 years from now, you'll probably be in the position of a parent. What kind of education system do you want your kid to have, as you're experiencing it firsthand right now?
So I think I would want my kid in an American education system, but I would not quite want my kid in a average American public high school, for many different reasons. American public high schools aren't quite highly looked upon. They have their fair share of own problems outside of having an American curriculum. Things like safety and like their quality of life, depending on where you live. It's a severe factor. So I think I would actually like my kid in American systems, mostly just because of how the curriculum runs outside of just grades, but also like extracurriculars and like having to involve yourself in the community. I think that's a great thing, and I would like my kid to be in a place like that. Meanwhile, I do think the Japanese education system does have a lot of merits, but I think it's a little bit too straightforward, just in the sense that you should just take the test. You should just study to take the test and grow to have grow in a STEM field. I think that my kids should have more diverse options in social ventures and things like that.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Moving away from this topic right now. Are you scared to take on student debt?
Absolutely. I think I do see myself having to take out student debt in the near future. I think a lot of people are in the same position, but yeah, I am scared of taking on student debt and repaying it back.
The military has an option. If you serve 4 years in the military, they pay out your student debt, right?
Yeah.
Is that in your sight or no?
I actually have considered this, joining the Air Force. It was only briefly, and I still think about it from time to time. And in all honesty, I don't want to join the military. But if I manage to get into a nicer college that costs a lot more, that might have to be an option for me. I do not plan on taking out like $300,000 in student loans to pay off college. That's a little bit absurd to me.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you on that. I have people in my community where they were dental students in UPenn. This person comes to mind. He's in Okinawa, and I've been pretty close to him. He went to a relatively easy to get in university, just the University of Buffalo, and then he went to do medical school in UPenn for dentistry, and then he served 4 years in the as a dentist in the military, which is pretty much just his job, and then went out of that and became a dentist. That's some kind of that's a pretty good option, I would say.
Yeah.
If time isn't an issue for you, if you're not urgent about going into your independent career life, that's something many people, if they have the option to go into the military, should consider, I believe. Closing up, we only have like 2 minutes left on the clock. You've experienced many education. You went to Japanese school. You interact with international students every day.
Yeah.
Whether that's people from Italy, Korea, China, Japan, Hong Kong, everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the world is shifting right now from a pretty liberal perspective to a more of a conservative perspective. Anti-globalism is such a big topic talked about right now. Education in most of the time is written by someone, right?
Yeah.
And it's a lot of times American education is written by American people, so it's pretty lenient on American history. It makes American history superior, right?
Mm-hmm.
Japan doesn't really do that. They take the blame for a lot of stuff that happened in history, which I do think is necessary to a certain degree. Where do you think that crosses the line, enforcing nationalism and globalism in education? Where do you think that strikes the line?
That's a difficult question to answer quickly, but I believe that um, countries should, of course, try to limit the amount of bias they put in textbooks, such as like history textbooks, for example. America does do that a lot. They omit a lot of things from history that might make them look bad. But at the same time, I think that should be reviewed by outside sources, such as maybe even like the UN could get involved, for example. Like
Exactly.
like a international league of some sorts could come and review these textbooks to make sure that children all around the world are getting I wouldn't say proper education, but more of a neutral perspective on all things, instead of simply receiving one country's feed out, for example. Yeah, that's my take on that. I believe that it should be reviewed by international sources.
Yeah. A difficult question to close, but you pretty much answered it perfectly, and I agree with you pretty much fully based on what you said right now. That pretty much wraps up today's show. Kai, thank you for coming,
Yeah, thank you.
and maybe we'll talk to you again on the show sometime.
Thank you.
今日はここまででありがとうございました。今日はホストの、レン大谷と、ゲストの方はカイ・ハリソン様でした。どうもありがとうございます。